Okay, so we're gonna make a soft slab mug. Last time we made a box and we called that a stiff slab. So this time we're gonna be working with a slab while it's still wet. So that's how it'll be different. And so today, by the end of class, we need to have a cylinder, a slab for the bottom, a small slab, and a handle. And we're going to make one like a loop. Beach limber again. Okay, so before we get started, what do we need to do with our tools?
Clean them?
Yep, clean them. And I had already done that. When it comes to your boards, I see a lot of you, let me just grab a random board. And sometimes there's still some clay left over from the last people. And I see you guys just taking the scraper and just scraping away at it. What's the problem with that?
It's bad if you inhale it.
Yes, the dust is bad if you inhale it. So, what's one way you can scrape it and not inhale any dust?
Spray it.
You could spray it lightly, or you can get a damp sponge and just wipe it down, make sure it's got some moisture in it. Not too much though, because especially if you're gonna use the board in a few minutes, then you can scrape that stuff. This one wasn't too bad, but I just wanted to show you how to get the board damp before you scrape. All right, and same thing with the other tools. A damp sponge, your cleaning buckets on your tables. Just make sure everything's clean before you start. Then, maybe I'll do some other prep work. We have these cans around, and we're going to mold the slab around the can so that it takes on the shape of a cylinder. But we need to put on newspaper first. Why do you think we put the newspaper around the can first?
So it won't stick?
Yes, it won't stick. Good. So I can kind of measure out about how much I need, almost half of this. Down. And throw that down. I'll need something to hold it on the can, so I'll get some tape right here. Wrap this around. And because I want to pull the can out, do I want to make the newspaper really tight around the can? No, just a little bit snug and make it kind of loose. Oops, I should have torn the tape off first, but well, you don't need that much tape. And I can test that by just pulling up, make sure the can can slide in and out really easily. Okay, that's my prep work for that. So now, what do I need to do to prep my clay?
Wedge it.
Wedge it, good. And what does wedging do?
Get out there, bubble.
Takes out air bubbles, what else?
Aligns the particle.
Good, aligns the particles, and so you'll have a better slab. And what else? What do you see coming off of the clay when I have it on this board here? Yeah, getting some water out. We run it through the machine and we get it really soft with a lot of water so that it'll be what you call plastic. If you look on the back on your terms that you'll be looking at the qualities for, one of the properties is plasticity. And so we want to get some water in it to get it plastic, but then we want to get some water out of it to work with what we need to do. All right. And the reason why I didn't do this before class is because I want you guys to see just how long it takes to wedge the clay. A lot of you guys, you get your clay, you kind of do this a little bit, and then you start working with it. And I could tell from your last project that you weren't wedging very well because I would not only see air bubbles sometimes, but I'd see your clay kind of tearing apart when you were stretching it out. So it takes a while to get the clay ready to go. So that's why I'm doing this whole showing you how long it takes. And some other problems I see when people are wedging is they sit down on the stool and you know they're down here and they're just kind of like this. But you got to stand up. This whole project needs to be done standing, or this part today needs to be done standing up. Because for wedging, you need to put your weight into it and turn it like I'm doing here. And when you're rolling out, you need to be standing up so you can put some good pressure, especially toward the end on your slab. And if you're wedging and it spreads out too much, just turn it back on its end and make sure you have your hands on the sides of it to contain it. Otherwise it just wants to spread out. And so that's the even way. I do it in a spiral, and we can go over that more later. And like Anira said, it aligns the particles in a spiral so that when you're on the wheel, it's easier to manipulate. Move my board closer to me. Also, these tables are pretty high, and if you need to, we have that table back there that's shorter, so you can really get over it and get your weight into it. I guess that's about enough. So I'm going to pound it into a ball. To close off those seams that came around. Thank you, Martin. All right, you two. And I'm gonna rock it back and forth to smooth it out more. Make it one big unit. All right. And where did I say I prefer to throw the slab when I'm making, or throw the clay when I'm making a slab? Yeah, I prefer the floor. I get the brush and I just brush away some debris. But for this demo, I'll do it up here. What are some mistakes that we make when we're doing this part here, when we're throwing the clay into a slab?
Don't throw it right.
You don't throw it right? What do you mean by that? Don't throw it right?
Put it flat down.
Yeah, some people throw it flat down or even at a slight angle. And what happens to the clay then?
Sticks.
Yep, sticks to the board or sticks to the floor. So how do I need to throw it?
Sideways somewhat, right?
Yeah, at an angle, good. Some people like to throw it away from them. I tend to, especially when I'm on the floor, I like to bring it towards me, but it's all the same. And I need to have it at least this width. So I went that way, I might turn it, just make it just a little bit wider. So that width, I'm about there. Maybe I'll just make it a little bit wider. Now I'll go this way. And some people get this part down so well that they just keep going and going. But what's our specified thickness for this? What thickness do I roll it to?
The sticks?
Yeah, the thickness of the sticks. So right about now, I want to stop the throwing part. When you're doing some really big slabs, you can keep going, but we're not doing that for this project. And so you put your sticks on the side. Do I want to butt them right up to the clay?
Nope.
Why not?
Let's try.
It'll stick, and the clay, we're trying to spread it out. And it spreads out up and back towards me, but it also spreads out to the side too. So when you see clay on these, the sticks, it's because people put them right up to there and they rolled and it went over onto the sticks. So yeah, give it some space. And then what do I do?
Roll it up.
Do I put the rolling pin right here and go up?
You know.
Right in the middle, because I want to spread it out. Another mistake that I was seeing in the last project was students were starting here and just pushing the clay like a bulldozer up there, and that's just kind of forcing it. The clay sticks to the board, and we just want it to spread out, kind of work with it. So give it 2 up, 2 down, flip it. And why do we want to flip it often?
So it doesn't stick.
Yep, so it doesn't stick. And if your board is too wet, then just get another board and get a dry board so that it'll stick less likely. Okay, again, flip. Also, if I'm going to wrap this around this can, how could I determine the amount of clay that I need, the length of the clay that I'll need to wrap around.
Roll it around the can.
Yeah, oh, I could roll it around, but is there a way to just measure and compute? If I can measure this circle,
Oh, so
or no, let's say measure the diameter. Measure the diameter. How do I know the what's that word for the length around the can? I mean, geometry people, math people.
The perimeter.
Perimeter, good. And what's the perimeter of a circle? What's that called?
Circumference.
Circumference, very good. And what's the length straight across the circle?
Diameter.
The diameter. So how do we go from diameter to the circumference? What do we multiply by? Miguel, you know. What's that? Do we multiply the diameter by to get the
Radius?
circumference?
Radius?
Yeah, well, the diameter is twice the radius, yes. Twice the radius times what? What's that funny character looking thing that?
Pi?
Pi, yep. And that's approximately what?
3.14?
Yeah, so you could get your calculator out and calculate that. And of course you'd want a little bit more. But for this project, I kind of made some of these templates to cut out. And so you can see it's the right height for this can. It's not the same height as the can because the can has this angled part, and we want to keep the clay below that because if the clay goes above it or into it, will we be able to pull the can out?
Nope.
No, so we keep it down here. So I have some at most of these tables. I'll put this at another one. And this length for the can, it's just the right length. It's a little bit longer, but I'll show you how to deal with that. And I don't remember if I flipped it or not, so I'm gonna flip it again because in the other class when I did this, I lost track and I made it stick when I stopped. So, is the clay still moving when I roll it out? Yeah, so I gotta keep going. Even though a lot of people say, oh, that's even, that's good enough. I can tell when it's not at this specified thickness, so you gotta keep going till you're there. And since I know that this is how much clay I need, I can put this here and take off some because take some off because I need some for the bottom slab. I'll just put this off to the side. I don't remember if I flipped it, so I'm gonna flip it again. Feels like it's got a little bit sticky, so I'm glad I did. All right, again, since I'm getting close, I'll get this out of the way. Is it still moving? Do you see it moving, Daniel? Yeah, it's still moving, so I gotta keep going. Flip again. Make sure the sticks are away from the piece. Still moving? Yep. Not so much down there. And again, I know I just need that much, so I'm gonna cut off this part here. I'll just put this off to the side. And I'm gonna flip it. Also, by trimming those off, I won't have this cumbersome slab, and I only need this much, so that's another reason to trim off what you don't need. Oops. Moving? Did it move at all?
No.
No. And also, if your slab gets a little bit too wide and it's barely hanging on to the sticks there, you can always trim some off there because again, all you need is this much. Okay. I'm just gonna flip it for good luck so it doesn't stick to the board. And what's my next step for the slab?
The blue thing.
Yeah, the blue rib. Good. Before I told you could use a little bit of slip on there to fill in the cracks, but this clay is wet enough so you don't need to, and also it's not as messy when you're moving it around the can. So you use a blue rib, make sure it's clean. We start on the edge and move in. Same thing on the sides. I can flip it. Do the same thing. right, and I need this much, so I'll put this down. You know what, I might flip it just to make sure it doesn't stick, because I was having bad luck with that in the other class. All right, flipped it. Put this down and hold the template down firmly. Get a nice clean fettling knife and run this here. Overrun it a little bit, overcut. Now I have my rectangle. I can take off the extra. Use this to make my handle later. Okay, so I have my rectangle, which will become a cylinder. Just flip it for, and now I can roll it around. And what do you think? Too much, too little? Too much. So I get my fettling knife and make sure it's perpendicular. Move down and make the cut. Let's see. And take off the extra. And look where we're at here. Let me take off this. All right, did I cut it too much or too little? What do you think? A little bit too much, but that's okay, because I'm going to get the blue rib and place it. I'm going to look at, this is my seam. I'm going to place the blue rib opposite the seam and pull it toward the seam. And do the same thing on the other side. And what is this doing here, do you think? Moving it? Yep, stretching it. And I'm almost there. I'll just give it another pass. Be gentle, I just put a kind of a mark in there, so I'm gonna kind of take that out while I'm doing this. Okay, then once the two parts are meeting, how do we usually join clay to clay? Good, score it and then slip it. But this clay is so soft for now, all we need to do is blend it. All right, so kind of like you did for your coil pots. And on its own, this wouldn't be a very smooth, very strong joint, but later on we're going to reinforce it from the inside, but not right now, not today. Okay, once you do that, you can maybe use a blue rib and smooth it out a little bit, but don't handle it too much because it's soft and we don't need to handle it yet. All right, so I kind of smoothed it out a little bit. Then I put this off to the side, and I'm just gonna remind you that at the end of the class, you need to pull the can out. All right, so we got this. So I got my cylinder. I still need my slab for the bottom. I can just use one of these pieces here and put it in between the sticks. Do the same thing, put it in the middle, up and down, flip, up and down, and blue rib. Okay, and to take this, put this away, I'm going to get one of the small square plastic boards and have some paper down. Why am I putting paper down? Yep, so it won't stick. So I do the blue rib on that side, blue rib on this side. Put this down here, and I'll set my, I gotta make sure that it's big enough for the bottom of the cylinder, and of course it is. And I'll show you how to join that next time, but as long as it's bigger than the bottom, that's all you need for today. And so what else do I need for my mug? A handle. So start out with some clay. What am I doing here? Yep, trying to get some air bubbles out. It's kind of hard to wedge a really small piece of clay like this, so one of this would work, but I also like to smash the air bubbles out. Okay, and if you look up here, I'm going to have you make a loop, and we'll modify that later, but when you see your mugs and cups at home, you want to put your phones away, class? When you see mugs at home, you'll see the handles are pretty thin, and they just come into contact with your mug in a small spot. And that's because they can do that because they're really strong. They're high fire clays. And if you look up on your terms again on the types of clay, there's like the kaolin and stoneware, earthenware. Those mugs you have at home are probably kaolin clays. And so they're very high fire, they're very strong. Our clay is a mid-fire. It's a stoneware. And so it's not as strong, and so we need to make things a little bit thicker than you would see your stuff in your kitchen. All right, so I have a piece of clay like this. What kind of vegetable is like this? Small potato maybe. And I want to make a handle. And the other day we had Daniel and Josh spray paint some of these dowels. I want you to make your handle this thickness. All right, maybe a little bit thicker, maybe a little bit thinner, but this is your guide here, and I'll have these at each table for you to gauge your piece. You can sort of start this coil like this. And I'm going to be trimming this clay a lot, but it's always easy to start out with a big piece of clay. And when you're rolling it out, it's good to just touch it lightly and roll it, and spread your fingers out as you're rolling it. And if you have a little bit of if it's not perfectly round, that's okay. See, I can tell that this is going to be too long, so I'm already going to start trimming the ends. Kind of air bubbles tend to be in the ends. Going. I don't need one nearly, but I'm almost there. This part's about there, but I'm stretch out just a little bit more. And a little bit more. Okay. I'm about there. If it's a little bit thicker, that's okay. A little bit thinner, that's fine. And I'm going to just kind of gauge how much I need to make a loop. So about there. Look, I have like 3 times more clay than I need. So I'll just cut it there. And roll some more. Okay. I'm going to gauge it with my hand, and cut it about there. If you can with these ones, you can just do a butt joint where they just go right up next to each other, or you can join them together by cutting an angle. Then when you join it together, there's kind of an overlapping and it's a little bit stronger. And even when you do this, you can cut it so that it overlaps just a little bit on each end. And you can do that when you compress it, this little extra, it'll compress down to the uniform diameter. So I'll try doing that. Cut an angle, cut an angle. All right, kind of gauge that for my hand. What do I do when it cracks like that? What do I need to do?
Put water.
Yeah, put water. I have just the cleaning bucket here. I'll just dip my finger in and repair those cracks. You can use water or slip. I just happen to have water nearby right now. Repair those cracks. Alright, and kind of size it, make sure it'll fit your cylinder. And now I'm pretty satisfied with it. I'll just join it together there at that crack. Or at the joint where I overlapped it, I'm going to blend it together. Compress it, fix more cracks. Then I'll just set it on here. And before I put it in a plastic bag, what do I need to do?
Put a paper towel.
Oh, I don't need a paper towel because I want it to get leather hard.
Cloth.
Cloth, bag, I need all those. What do I need to do before all those?
Put your name.
Yes, take out the can. Easy to forget, but it's very important that we remove the can. And that's what you need by the end of class. Put it in a bag, put your name on a piece of tape, put it on the bag, and put it in your locker. Understood? Any questions before we get to work?
Nope.
All right, those of you who have not yet done so, wash your hands. There's paper towels over here. And I'll be around to help you roll your slabs,